One very, very important ratio, and you all saw this. In fact, some people made a mistake and they copied the wrong number. But you all saw this on your income statements, is what's called earnings per share. Earnings per share is the amount of profit you have per share of stock. So the way you would calculate is you would take the total net income, subtract any preferred dividends, and then divide the difference by the average number of common shares outstanding. And that would give you earnings per share. And stockholders really like this because they can relate it to the stock price. So let's say the earnings per share is $5 a share, and I have $1,000. Then my shares earned $5,000 in profit. So it's nice to know like how profitable your shares are. Key formula, and again, earnings per share. You try to remember ways to, you don't need a formula sheet for that. Earnings per share. Earnings is net income on the top. Share on the bottom is the average number of shares. So it shouldn't take a lot of, memorization to get there. And just earnings, when we calculate it, we subtract preferred dividends if there are any. Now let me show you a few things here because this is what makes it very interesting. A lot of people think that the price of the stock is that a stock like that's $100 or more is expensive, and a stock that's like $10 or something less than that is cheap. And stock, do you have a question, Harvey?
Yeah, question. So for the earnings per share, if they don't pay that dividend, they don't really mean anything, right?
No, it means they kept the profits inside the company, that's all. Companies don't have to pay dividends. They could reinvest it in the company.
Yeah, but the shareholders don't actually receive the money.
Right, the shareholders don't receive the money. But then why would the shareholders buy any stock that doesn't pay dividends? Why would anyone buy Uber?
So we expect the value to increase.
They expect the value of the stock to go up. Why would the value of the stock go up? People are buying it, right? If there's no expectation of dividends. Right? So we said, why would people buy a stock? They expect dividends. So, but what about companies that don't pay dividends? Then they expect the value of the stock to go up. Why will the value of the stock to go up? Because people are going to buy the stock. But why are they going to buy the stock? Because they expect future dividends. But there were no dividends. It just goes around in circles, right? What's the answer to the, there's a word for things like that. What's the answer to the riddle? But why would anyone buy a stock like Uber that may never pay dividends? Because one day it may pay dividends. It may pay a lot of dividends. Look at Apple. Apple didn't pay dividends for years, or paid very low dividends, and then it paid a monster dividend. Or Microsoft. For years, Microsoft didn't pay dividend. And all of a sudden, Bill Gates paid the largest dividend in history. Because there's the expectation that one day the company will be so big and pay so much dividends that your investment will be worth it. Right, and stick someone else with it. Find a bigger fool than myself. Right? I don't get that though. How can a company like Uber be worth $18 billion? I just don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, the earnings per share tells you how profitable each share is. And we're going to get to a very important point in a moment. A point that will give you a different understanding about how stocks work. Earnings per share is net income divided by the average number of shares. So let's take two companies with $1 million, Attar and Wagdi, named after two of my favorite professors. Net income is $1 million for Attar, $1 million for Wagdi. But, okay, Attar has 2 million shares outstanding, whereas Wagdi only has 500,000 shares of common stock outstanding. So both companies have the same profitability, but Attar has 2 million shares outstanding, and Wagdi has 500,000 shares outstanding. So therefore, Attar's earnings per share will only be 50 cents, and Wagdi's earnings per share will be $2. You ever listen to Bloomberg Radio? Anyone? You business major? Any finance majors here? So you got to listen to Bloomberg Radio because they talk about finance all day long. And that's, people are going to come to you wanting to know how to make money, and you're going to be an expert. And so they're going to pay you a lot of money for being an expert. The way you become an expert is you immerse yourself into it. So when you drive to school in the morning, turn off the crummy rap music and stuff and listen to Bloomberg Radio and learn something, because that's what's going to make you money. Anyway, talk to people who are in the investment world who make a lot of money, and they'll tell you that they immerse themselves in information. They're nuts. And they're literally constantly checking the wire and everything else on their phones to get more and more information about their investments. And Bloomberg Radio is a really great thing to listen to. Stop listening to all this garbage and listen to news of finance. You have a 24-hour finance station on the radio. What a gift, Anyway, Atar companies, when they announce their earnings, are always announcing their earnings per share. So Atar announces earnings per share of 50 cents. WAGD announces earnings per share of $2 a share. So let's answer the questions. Refer to EPS information above. Even though WAGD reports greater or lower EPS, both companies have the same net income. So does a company with greater EPS have greater profitability? A company with greater EPS does or does not indicate greater profitability? Total profitability is the same. It's $1 million. So how is it that WAGD is more profitable than ART? It isn't. Does not. Does not?
Yeah, it does not.
But WAGD has $2 per share income. So if you have a share of WAGD, you have $2 more, $2 in income. If you had a share in Atar, you have 50 cents in income. Which one's more profitable? Why? Because WAGD has a higher income. But it doesn't. They both have the same net income. They both have $1 million in income. You can argue it either way. But you could argue very easily. I'm going to write here it does not. But if you wrote does, don't think you got it wrong. Now, because it depends, right, on how many shares you have. So if you have 4 shares of ART or 1 share of WAGD, then you're the same. You have the same proportion of the company, the same proportion of net income. But earnings per share on the face of it is quite different. You can't compare different companies' earnings per share. If a Atar company buys back 1 million shares of common stock, then treasury stock would increase, common shares outstanding would decrease, and earnings per share would increase. Because, why? The denominator here would no longer be $2 million, it would be $1. It would be $1 million. So EPS would go from 50 cents to $1. It's $1 million divided by a million shares. The increase in EPS would look good because their share of the ownership interest has increased. Hence, buying back treasury stock increases your earnings per share and your stock price. Let's try something else. Atar company issues another 1 million shares of common stock. Then common shares outstanding would increase and earnings per share would decrease to how much? 33 cents. Oops. The decrease in EPS would look very, very, very bad because their proportionate ownership interest has decreased. So you can think about it like the pizza again. You have 1 slice in the pizza and you think there's 8 slices. But I announced that now there's going to be 10 slices. How much pizza do you have? You have less pizza. Let's say I say, okay, we got a pizza here, 8 slices. I'm going to make another 2 slices. Instead of cutting it into 8 slices, 10, and give 2 slices to the pizza man. Right? That means you have less pizza. So now let's look at the trends here. Atar's earnings per share is going up every year. Different situation. 10 cents to 20 cents to 50 cents. Wagdi's earnings per share is going down every year. 8 to 4 to 2. EPS for Atar company has an increasing trend, while Wagdi company has a decreasing trend. So comparing over time helps you or doesn't help you? Okay, here's the best. It can help you. It helps to look at how earnings per share changes. But comparing one company's earnings per share to another company's earnings per share is in fact a very dangerous thing to do. Now, here we go. We have what we call the PE ratio. The PE ratio is calculated, you can remember PE, price earnings ratio.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry, I do apologize for disturbing you. We're having the LSAT exam in next door.
Oh.
And if you would mind, can I close your door?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Please, and I'll close, there's this one too, I'm sorry. Man, it must be horrible. It's funny, you guys probably aren't hearing a word I'm saying because you're so zoned out, and they're probably like all distracted. Like, who is this guy? What's he talking about? So like, not only am I probably not getting through to you because you're so tired, and I'm completely distracted. Man, it's just a world of misery out there. So well, you can't win. So the PE ratio, I hope I didn't ruin anybody's chances for law school now. The PE ratio, I have one less lawyer in the world. I guess that would be a kindness. The PE ratio is the price earnings ratio. So price divided by earnings is sometimes shown P/E. Price divided by earnings. The way you would calculate this is you would take the market price and divide by the earnings per share. So it's a ratio on a ratio because earnings per share is also a ratio. By the way, earnings per share, again, is always at the bottom of the income statement. You have different measures. You have what's called earnings per share, and then you may also have something called diluted earnings per share. It's better to use diluted. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it, but it is better to use diluted. Market price is the closing stock market price whenever you want to see the measure. And EPS is earnings per share. Preferably use diluted earnings per share rather than regular earnings per share. Now, what PE ratio does is it tells you how expensive the stock is. That's what you want to know. A $90 stock isn't necessarily expensive. A $10 stock is not necessarily cheap. What the PE ratio tells you is it tells you how expensive it truly is.